It's the end of 1979. Steve Jobs took a visit to the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center and completely changed his outlook on computers. The Xerox Alto was the first ever computer with a graphical interface, equipped with bitmap graphics, a mouse, and networking via Ethernet. This new way of looking at computers gave Jobs the view of having computers for everyone, not just hobbyists and business users. This moment would change Apple computers for the next half century and beyond. In this video, we will be talking about the change from the Motorola processors to the PowerPC processors, one of the first major transitions within Apple. But first, much like we covered a few seconds ago, we should talk about the change from the 6502 to the Motorola 68000. I'd also like to thank our channel members who make this content possible. The MOS Technology 6502 was the main processor used in the majority of 8-bit computers in the late 70s and early 80s. Machines like the Nintendo Entertainment System, Atari 2600, both Apple I and Apple II, the Commodore PET, the VIC-20, and the Atari 8-bit line computers even used this. Even the Commodore 64 used a processor very similar to the 6502. This was a very affordable chip and was the status quo of early computing.
And a lot of people working on it, but it's a pretty fierce problem. Now, Apple's strategy is really simple. What we want to do is we want to put an incredibly great computer in a book that you can carry around with you that you can learn how to use in 20 minutes. That's what we want to do, and we want to do it this decade. And we really want to do it.
As we stated earlier, Steve Jobs wanted something more for this dream computer he had in mind. He wanted bitmap graphics and a computer intuitive enough for the average mother or father to use. Even for the grandparents, he wanted them to use it. He envisioned a computer for everyone on Earth to use. The first Apple computer that used the Motorola 68K was the Lisa. The Lisa was the first commercial computer to use a graphical interface as well as a mouse. This was a stepping stone in the right direction for a computer for everyone. As many of you know, the Lisa was a complete failure commercially, but what it did do, however, was lay the groundwork for the Macintosh. Since Lisa failed at the commercial level, it showed that a computer for the masses would need to be accessible to the masses. You probably didn't need a Lisa to figure this out. A $10,000 price tag in 1980 was not very attractive to the average consumer. For around the same price, someone could buy a fully loaded Corvette in 1980 for $13,000. The Lisa did not provide the same use as a car or several cars depending on what you're buying. Looking out at the competition, something interesting was going on around this time too. The IBM PC was released in 1981, and soon a wave of clones came out as well, significantly hurting Apple's market share. Now, IBM and the clones were doing computing for hobbyists and professionals much better than Apple was. The normies still didn't care, however, so nobody had captured the average person market yet. But the clock was ticking, and it was only a matter of time before the masses picked up on the power of the personal computer. Commodore also came out with the Commodore 64, which was a huge development in personal computer adoption within the United States. Atari's 8-bit line of computers also introduced computer gaming to the masses. Computer games were not a new concept in 1982. Arcade machines were already picking up steam, and Pong was released just 10 years prior in arcades around the country. So arcade machines were already within the country's collective consciousness at this point. What Commodore and Atari did was give the consumers the ability to play their favorite arcade classics in the home, at a fixed price. It was much more convenient now just to play the video games at home instead of leaving the house and going to the arcade and dropping a ton of quarters on Donkey Kong and Frogger. This isn't saying arcades were made obsolete after this. the arcades offered a much better performance and graphical capabilities to the home console versions of their favorite games. In the personal computer market, the masses were adopting computers for entertainment purposes. Video game consoles were also on the rise heavily until the video game crash in 1983. Video game developers got very lazy and comfortable with the games they were putting out. The consumers got very sick of these low-quality games being released. E.T. is often blamed for the crash, but this wasn't the only reason. Well, yes, E.T. was slop made to cash in on the movie. Other attempts at arcade classics like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and other poor licensed cash grabs contributed to the whole crash in the United States. Funny enough, Atari buried millions of unsold and returned games in a desert after the crash. This was really just an urban legend until in 2014, when an excavation found many of the games buried here. Because of the crash of the video game market, which was a big selling point for personal computer and video games and all that, the masses got burnt out with computers for a few years. Interest cooled, and while computers still had a strong foothold in business and hobbyist spaces, the average person had little reason to get excited about the next big thing in tech. That all changed in 1984. Just as the industry was struggling to win back the public's attention, Apple dropped a bombshell: the Macintosh. With its revolutionary graphical user interface, simple point-to-click operation, and the iconic 1984 Super Bowl ad, the Mac positioned itself as the computer for normal people. It wasn't just a beige box for spreadsheets or arcade knockoffs, it was a new kind of machine. One that made computing approachable, creative, and even fun. In many ways, the Macintosh reignited the flame for personal computing. However, the Macintosh didn't sell especially well for personal use. Many people used Macs they didn't personally buy, instead encountering them in schools, businesses, or other organizations. Despite modest home sales, the Mac quickly made its mark on culture. Creative industries like graphic design, publishing, and newspapers adopted it rapidly, thanks to Apple's LaserWriter printer and the PageMaker software, which together helped launch the desktop publishing revolution. Under the hood, this was all possible by the Macintosh's Motorola 68000 processor, a powerful chip for the time that enabled the graphics-heavy tasks needed for layout, design, and image rendering. This cemented Apple's long-lasting niche in the creative world. In general office settings, though, the Mac struggled. Key business softwares like Lotus 123 was not compatible. Meanwhile, the IBM PC dominated the cubicle workspaces. In schools, however, Apple also succeeded here. The company pushed very hard to get Macs into classrooms across the United States, laying the groundwork for early brand loyalty. The engine powering this machine, the Motorola 68000 processor, was impressive in 1984, offering true 16-bit and 32-bit computing with a clean architecture that made the Mac feel faster and more responsive than many of its contemporaries. But this chip would not hold its lead for long. As years went on, Intel's x86 processors rapidly advanced in speed and capability, powering a wave of IBM PC clones that flooded the market. These machines were cheaper and more expandable, and benefited from a much wider software library. While the Mac kept a loyal creative audience, the gap in raw power and price-to-price performance began to show, and Apple found itself falling behind in the processor race. Apple knew it had to make a move. The Motorola 68K line that powered the original Macintosh was aging very fast, and the gap between Macs and PC clones were only getting wider. In response, Apple teamed up with Motorola and IBM in the early 1990s to create a new processor architecture, PowerPC. This new chip line was designed to break free from the limitations of both Motorola's old 68K architecture and Intel's increasingly dominant x86 architecture. PowerPC promised better performance and a more modern design, with the potential to take Apple into the future. In 1994, the first Power Macintosh computers hit the market, and with them, Apple began a major transition that will define much of the company's hardware strategy for the next decade. While Apple was navigating to move to PowerPC, a major shift had already happened behind the scenes. In 1985, Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple and the visionary behind the original Macintosh, we all know who he is, does he really need a description, was ousted from the company after internal power struggles. He went on to start a new company called Next, building high-end workstations that never sold well but were years ahead of their time in software design. Next's operating system, Next Step, introduced concepts that would eventually form the foundation of the modern Mac OS.
Here we are at the Next computer, and we want to look at two things. The first, of course, is what it's like to actually build a mission-critical app. And we're going to do that here. Better networking than PCs and Macs, and much, much better productivity apps that let people work together as groups and really increases their group productivity and collaboration. So let's take a look at that first, and then we'll get to building an actual custom app that can interoperate with these off-the-shelf productivity apps. Color images. If this was a Macintosh or a PC, moving around these full-color images would take till next week for them to all repaint. And so rather than just moving the outlines, moving the entire images along with us really is fantastic benefit if you're working in publishing or some other area that demands that you use color imagery. This person wanted to include a color photograph in their mail message, so they just scanned it in on any one of the several scanners available and dropped it in mail. Next is fully drag and drop, so if I click on this, I can just drag out this image and drag it into another application if that's what I wanted to do. The fact that some companies have legacy applications built in DOS, as an example, that they have to run, that were built by their MIS department, let's say, that will never be rewritten. It turns out you can run DOS applications in a window on Next Step because of a product called SoftPC by Insignia. Now, I've learned just enough DOS to be able to demo this to you. It's quite intuitive. DIR here. There we go. 1, 2, 3. And here's 1, 2, 3 running in a window. And I may be able to bring up a file here. /F. It's a wonderful user interface. R, 1, 2, 3. There we go. So here's an example of a 1, 2, 3 worksheet running inside a PC window. So I have an image of a forest. I'm going to put a Ferrari on the forest here. And as you can see, I can move it around. What I really want to do, though, is get rid of that black rectangle. I want to say that everything around the Ferrari is is transparent. The Ferrari itself is opaque, except for its window, which is semi-transparent. And in the Next Step environment, I can do that. And as you can see a little semi-transparency there in the window. I can put Donald Duck here on, and also eliminate Donald's black. And I can even put Donald behind the Ferrari here. And you'll notice again that semi-transparency behind the Ferrari's window. All that's just built in. Is we've actually built in some three-dimensional graphics, then rotated, and this cube is being rendered in real time as we watch it and being composited onto a 2D image behind the car and behind that last tree. Now, we believe that over the coming years, three-dimensional graphics may play a very important role in business as we try to visualize more and more complex data in ways that we can assimilate very rapidly.
While Next computers weren't a commercial success at all, their tech would eventually play a huge role in Apple's comeback. Meanwhile, back in Apple, the transition to PowerPC brought fresh power to the Mac lineup. But the company struggled with a fragmented product line, poor product management decisions, and a dwindling market share for the 1990s. By the mid-1990s, Apple was losing its identity and its money. In a twist of fate, Apple ended up buying Next in 1996 to help build the next generation of Mac software. In reality, Apple bought back Steve Jobs, and the groundwork for Mac OS as we know it was laid.
Well, good morning. We were up till 3 o'clock last night finishing this advertising up, and I want to show it to you in a minute, see what you think of it. I've been back about 8 to 10 weeks, and we've been working really hard. And what we're trying to do is not something really highfalutin. We're trying to get back to the basics. We're trying to get back to the basics of great products, great marketing, and great distribution. We started with the product line. We looked at the product roadmap going out for a few years,
And we said a lot of this doesn't make sense, and it's way too much stuff, and there's not enough focus. And so we actually got rid of 70% of the stuff on the product roadmap. I mean, I couldn't even figure out the damn product line after a few weeks. I kept saying, well, what's this model? How does this fit? And I started talking to customers, and they couldn't figure it out either. And so you're going to see the product line get much simpler, and you're going to see the product line get much better. And there's some new stuff coming out.
But the reality was more complicated. Many popular Mac programs needed to be rewritten or ran through slow emulation to work on PowerPC, causing frustration between developers and users alike. Apple's product lineup became confusing with different PowerPC models offering inconsistent capabilities, making it harder for software creators to optimize their apps. Meanwhile, again, Intel's chips were rapidly advancing, widening the performance gap once again, something they tried to solve by switching over to PowerPC. Despite its technical promise, the PowerPC transition failed to reverse Apple's slipping market share. The Mac became seen as a very niche machine, powerful but expensive, and increasingly isolated from the broader PC world. The transition that was meant to modernize the Mac had left it in a even worse off tangled mess. But Jobs' arrival marked a new beginning. macOS 10 built on the advanced Next Step foundation, and this was a very fresh start. They designed it to leave behind the old struggles and usher in a new future of stability and innovation. The PowerPC processors powering the early macOS 10 machines played a crucial role in bringing this vision to life. The chips could handle the demands of the Mac OS X's modern features. The processors also enabled a smoother, more responsive graphical interface, which showcased Apple's focus on design and usability. While PowerPC chips had their challenges, their ability to efficiently manage complex tasks helped macOS 10 gain traction among developers and users who needed a robust, modern operating system. This period saw Apple slowly rebuilding trust with professionals, creatives, and eventually the broader market. The early PowerPC-powered Macs running macOS 10 set the foundation for the system's growth, proving that Apple could innovate not just in hardware design but also in software stability and performance, even if the processor architecture itself would later face limitations. While Apple was rebuilding with PowerPC chips in macOS 10, Microsoft and Intel were dominating the broader personal computer market. Windows was evolving rapidly, with Windows 95 launching in 1995, of course, and becoming a massive success by making PCs more user-friendly and widely accessible. This cemented Microsoft's position as the leading operating system for the masses, so Microsoft won. At the same time, Intel was advancing aggressively with its Pentium processors, delivering significant performance improvements year after year. Intel's chips power the vast majority of IBM-compatible PCs. Machines that were generally cheaper, had a huge software library, and benefited from massive industry support. This Intel-Microsoft duo created a virtuous cycle. Better chips enabled more powerful Windows software, which in turn demanded better Windows PCs, which drove Intel to innovate further. It was just a nice, beautiful loop. Meanwhile, Apple's PowerPC Macs remained a niche choice, favored mostly by creative professionals and loyal fans, but struggling to compete on price and software variety. The competition from Intel's relentless innovation and Microsoft's software dominance put pressure on Apple to keep innovating and foreshadowed the challenges the company would face in maintaining relevance in a rapidly evolving PC landscape. But as the new millennium approached, it became clear that PowerPC's promise had its limits. Intel's relentless innovation and the growing software gap put Apple at a critical crossroads. Would the company stick with its aging architecture or make a bold move that would reshape the future of the Mac forever? In the next video, we'll explore the dramatic transition from PowerPC to Intel, a turning point that saved Apple and changed the face of personal computing. Apple's move from Motorola 68K processors to the PowerPC architecture was its first major transition, a bold attempt to leap forward in performance and innovation. While PowerPC brought important technical advances and helped power the early years of the Mac OS X operating system, it wasn't enough to keep Apple competitive against the rapidly advancing Intel-powered PC market. This transition showed the promise and the challenges of changing a core technology at such a critical time. Ultimately, it was a crucial stepping stone in Apple's journey, setting the stage for future transformations that would define the company's comeback. I would like to thank you all for watching this video. If you haven't yet and are new to the channel, then please consider subscribing and liking the video, since it tells YouTube that I'm doing a damn fine dandy job. And if you're already a viewer here and you're already subscribed, then consider becoming a member to the channel. Anything else